Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news, interviews, and fun for the WordPress community. Now, welcome your host, Nathan Wrigley. Hello there, and welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. You've reached episode number 419, entitled Elementor V4 Unveiled with Gabriella Laster. It was published on Thursday, the 24th of April, 2025. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and before that chat about Elementor, a few bits of housekeeping. The first thing to mention is the Page Builder Summit is just around the corner. If you have a business in the WordPress space and you're designing WordPress websites, it's very much in your wheelhouse. Head to pagebuildersummit.com and over there you'll be able to grab your free ticket. Simply click the Get Your Free Ticket button. That was complicated. Give us your name and email and we'll keep you updated all about the summit. It's starting on May the 12th, running through the whole of that week. And as I said, all of the sessions are completely free. There is an option to buy the upsell, which a lot of people seem to be doing at the moment. It's really good value for money and will enable you to see all of the sessions without interruption forever and ever. pagebuildersummit.com to find out more. If you're in the WordPress space and you have a product or service that you'd like to get in front of that audience, why not look at sponsoring? pagebuildersummit.com/sponsors. The other thing to mention is that if you like what we're doing over at WP Builds, why not take a look at advertising on this podcast? There's going to be 3 companies in a moment that you'll hear from, and they are getting themselves out in front of a very large WordPress-specific audience. You could do the same. Head to wpbuilds.com/advertise to find out more. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more at go.me/WP Builds. We are also kept on the airwaves by Bluehost. Bluehost, redefine your web hosting experience with Bluehost Cloud. Managed WordPress hosting that comes with lightning-fast websites, 100% network uptime, and 24/7 priority support. With Bluehost Cloud, the possibilities are out of this world. Experience it today at bluehost.com/cloud. And we are also generously helped out by Omnisend. Omnisend, do you sell your stuff online? Then meet Omnisend. Yes, that Omnisend, the email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. The one that's so good, it's almost boring. Hate the excitement of roller coaster sales? Prefer a steady line going up? Try Omnisend today at omnisend.com. And sincere thanks go to GoDaddy Pro, Bluehost, and Omnisend for their ongoing continuing support of the WP Builds podcast. Podcasts like this could not happen without the gracious support of companies just like them. Once more, if you want to be involved, head to wpbuilds.com/advertise to find out more. Okay, what have we got for you today? Well, today I am chatting all about Elementor V4 version 4. I'm chatting to Gabriella Laster, who comes from Elementor, and we get into the conversation today about, well, what is Elementor V4? Why was there a whole major rewrite of the codebase? What was the point of that? We talk about the performance improvements, an entirely new CSS first approach, which is going to really modify things if you are a current Elementor user. Hopefully the UI will be intuitive and easy to follow, and there'll be some enhancements to workflow features. So a really major update to the way things work under the hood. I'm assured that it won't break things, so hopefully you current Elementor users will just have a new UI to look forward to and some different bits and pieces to go and play with. And Gabriella is going to explain all about that. And I hope that you enjoy it. I am joined on the podcast by Gabriella Laster. Hello, Gabriella.
Hi, Nathan. How are you?
Good. Very nice to have you with us today. We're going to be talking a lot today about Elementor, whether you knew it or not. Elementor is about to have a fairly significant update. It's called version 4. And Gabriella is here today to talk to us all about that. Before that, Gabriella, just maybe a minute, 30 seconds, something like that. Can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, maybe how long you've been working with Elementor, your WordPress journey, whatever you like, really. So over to you for a little bio.
Sure. So I am Gabriella. I'm a product marketing director at Elementor, and I've been here for a little over 3.5 years. That is also when I truly became part of the WordPress ecosystem and community. I think that I've probably dabbled a little bit with WordPress in previous roles. I've been in marketing for over 10 years, so I've had to update blogs occasionally, but I don't think I actually knew what WordPress was or how big WordPress was until I joined Elementor.
Yeah. And then, of course, how big Elementor is inside of WordPress. I mean, I don't know if I've been making podcasts in the WordPress space for nearly 9 years now. And when I began, Elementor was not even around. And then a few similar tools, we call them page builders, I guess, for want of a better word, came along and really started to take over in the WordPress space. And Elementor was a little bit late to the party. You know, it came along a year or two after some other ones, but very quickly, the numbers for Elementor just went up and up and up and overtook everybody. And for a really long period of time, Elementor was in the news all the time because they got a new feature, this new thing, that new thing, and what have you. And actually, when you look at the growth of WordPress over the last 8 or 9 years, a fairly significant chunk of WordPress's growth is directly coming out of the product that you have. Elementor is a significant slice of the WordPress pie. And so there's millions of Elementor websites out there. And because there's millions of Elementor websites out there, if you're going to change things, and you're going to tell us about that in a minute, if you're going to change things, I'm guessing you have to be fairly careful, because it's not like 1 or 2 websites. There are literally millions of things that could go wrong, and you've got to make sure that's all catered for. So there's no question there. I was just making the observation that, you know, Elementor is enormous, basically.
And that's definitely something we keep in mind as we think about how to roll this out and how this is going to impact websites or users. It's a huge consideration for us.
Yeah. All the talk about Elementor in the past and the updates and the features that have been added and so on, they've always in the past, at least in my head, been fairly incremental. So there's been we've got a new feature, go and check it out. Here's another new little feature. We've moved a setting around and so on. But this I don't think is that. So version 4 almost feels like a complete rewrite. Obviously it's not, and we'll try to make the case for, if you're a current Elementor user, there's no Chicken Little moment here. Hopefully the sky is not falling in. But tell us why version 4 needed to exist. What's different about it than everything that came before it?
Elementor's been around for over 8 years at this point. Over this time, we have introduced many, many, many different features and capabilities. In the beginning, at the very, very beginning, each version was able to introduce a lot more features because there was a larger gap to close at that point. And then in the past couple of years, the versions became a little bit more incremental. We had so many capabilities available already, and every new capability we wanted to introduce became a lot more complicated because you have to take into consideration all of the previous code that existed and how you introduce a new feature and integrate it with all the code that had already existed. And how do you make sure that you do that without breaking any of the 18 million websites that exist? So part of the reason we're building Editor V4 is we want to obviously introduce a more modern code. And that will also enable us to introduce many capabilities that we've wanted to do for a while, but it was very difficult for us to do with the current version and the way it was built currently.
Yeah, I guess any developer will know this moment where, the technology just moves on And the thing that you've built, if you want to update it, you've got to do a pretty, you can get away with updating the current code base for a long period of time. But at some point, typically you have to go back and rewrite a whole bunch of stuff. So we're recording this in the middle of April 2025, and I will hopefully get this episode out fairly swiftly. But what is the kind of timeline that you're looking at for actually launching it? I know that you're probably going to go through a batch of testing and what have you. Just tell us about the alpha, beta, and then final release date, should everything work out. And obviously we won't hold you to any of that because there might be some hiccups along the way.
So we're taking this entire year to build a really solid V4. The first alpha version that we plan on introducing, the beta version of it, so the first ever introduction of it, is planned for the end of April, should all the testing go as expected. And then after that, we plan on having incremental releases. So the first introduction is going to be pretty massive. It's going to introduce the entire infrastructure of what we want to introduce going forward. We'll be introducing a number of different widgets or add-ons, we're going to call them, going forward, and many different features and capabilities. Some of them we don't have at Elementor today and will be part of V4.
Okay. So during the course of 2025, you're basically rolling it out over the next 6 months or so, but hoping to begin getting it into testers' hands within a couple of weeks of us recording this podcast, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, okay. And I know the primary concern for Elementor users, and let's be honest, there are literally hundreds of thousands of people out there who make their living off your product. They're freelancers, they're agencies and what have you, and clients come to them, we want a website. And so they reach for what they know, Elementor, and they build those websites. And I know the concern is going to be, firstly, will it break, this new dramatic code base rewrite? And secondly, will I have to learn the UI again? Is everything going to be moved around, or will it basically look familiar? So let's take that one first. Is it going to be a big design change as well? If I launch V4 on the day it finally comes out and I'm not being part of a beta test or anything like that, should it look basically the same?
If you're waiting until the entire V4 is available and usable, then it will probably look a little bit different. Also, very familiar. We're doing two things. One thing is we're trying to keep the UI as familiar as possible on the one hand, but also modernize it a little bit. We still want to make sure that the user experience is incredibly intuitive. And we are spending the next couple of months trying to phase people into the new version. So we're taking this time to also gradually introduce new features and capabilities and giving you the ability to decide when you opt in, and giving you also the opportunity to start getting used to the new capabilities and the new UI. It's not going to be a massive overhaul.
Okay.
It will still look very familiar. It's just going to be a lot more intuitive.
Okay, so it'll be kind of like, icons on the left, drag things into the canvas in the middle, and then there's maybe some additional settings in different places. In other words, it's not going to be like, okay, you switch overnight and suddenly where the heck is everything? It's more a case of, oh, okay, that's curious, that's moved a little bit, or the icon for that has changed, or the menu. It's going to be fairly modest. You're hoping that the UI will broadly be familiar for somebody that's dropping in who's been familiar with it. Okay.
It's still going to look like Elementor.
Yeah.
It's not going to look like an entirely different builder all of a sudden.
Okay. And from the point of view, probably the crucial question for somebody that's used Elementor is it intended that you'll be able to just carry on using it on existing sites, or is there some dependency? Is there kind of a breaking change anywhere anticipated? In other words, will you be encouraging people to use the V3X, whatever that is, and then switch over to 4 with care, or should it just be a case of, okay, just get on with it? Version 4 is now out. Nothing should break.
So for the foreseeable future, they both are going to coexist.
Oh, okay.
So enabling V4 is not going to break anything on your website. You're going to be able to use V4 components or features, capabilities with V3 on your website. You are not obligated to update your website entirely to V4. So if you have an existing website and you want to add a new page, or you want to add a a new section to a page, you can use V4 on that page and it will coexist with V3.
Right.
Having said that, there might be, because we're introducing new features in V4, they won't work on V3 elements. So if, for example, I introduce a new feature in V4, a new styling feature in V4, I won't be able to necessarily use it on a V3 widget.
Got it. Let me just see if I've understood that perfectly then. So the way that you've described it, it sounds like this to me. You'll have, if you're bringing an existing website, which is V3, you'll have the option to have V3 and V4 running at the same time. And maybe if you've got a V3 page, say, there will be parts of that which may not map perfectly. And so things, you might have to rewrite in pages against the V4 standard. But obviously, if you're creating new pages, you probably want to do that in the V4 interface, just because that's where all the new, shiny, non-breaking stuff is. But will that then, firstly, is that about right? Have I encapsulated that about?
Close.
Okay.
I think that maybe one part was misunderstood. On the same page, you can use V3 and V4.
Okay.
You can have a section that is fully V4. You just can't apply V4 styling features to V3 elements on that same page.
I did misunderstand that. So you can combine the two in both places, but the bits that make up the page, the rows and the modules and the elements, I should say, that's maybe where the problem might lie. Okay, so that then hopefully will make the change over to V4 much more simple, because maybe it'll just be this one little bit that you've got to change if you wish to roll over to V4. Okay, does that then mean that we'll have two Elementor plugins going at the same time? I'm guessing not. It'll just be one plugin with kind of like a V3 section and a V4 section.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's address why the heck you're putting yourself through all this pain. Because, you've got an existing code base, it works, but clearly technology moves on. Maybe the people, the developers over at Elementor are kind of thinking, well, there's a lot coming down the road. CSS and all of those kind of things are changing the whole time. What are the things which have been identified as, okay, this is why we need to change it? The 2-3 big things.
We want to be able to improve performance tremendously. So that's one aspect of it. I think the CSS first approach will empower us and our users to be able to improve their workflow, to design more consistently, to build more responsive websites. And it will also enable us to introduce many more features a lot faster than we have been able to in the past couple of months. So I think at the end of the day, it's worth it. I don't know. I wouldn't consider it a pain. I mean, it's a little bit of a pain, but also I think it's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, the genuine thing about the internet is it literally never slows down. It's constantly changing, and you've got the WC3 constantly adapting and modifying and expanding, particularly what CSS can do. And you know, a tool like yours, you'll be left behind if you don't adapt. But I'm curious. You said CSS first. I think that's what you said. Just to encapsulate that, tell me what that means, because at the moment, if I use almost any page builder, I go in, I drop in the elements or the modules, whichever page builder you're using, and then I sort of toggle settings, I do sliders, I type in numbers for padding and so on. And really, I'm not often getting involved in the CSS and writing CSS classes and things like that. Is that more where you're pushing people towards? Writing CSS, or is it a case of, I don't know, just creating classes and doing the sliders, but binding the sliders and the settings to those classes? You're going to have to just fill me in, because I'm not understanding that bit.
So we're still keeping it fairly visual. You're not required to write any CSS. Obviously, you can, but you're not required to. At the end of the day, what we're thinking of is, what are the CSS capabilities that we can tie. I don't know if tie is the right word. But what are the CSS functions that we can apply to different elements? And that will create a scenario where we can be a lot more diverse and creative and improve our workflow tremendously. So by by taking a CSS first approach, what we're doing is we're broadening the capabilities that we can provide within the editor.
So obviously you've probably, I imagine, had a little bit of a play with this. Can you describe how it differs? And I know it's an audio podcast, that's going to be fairly tricky, but are you able to sort of describe the way that the CSS first approach differs from what you've got right now? Is there more typing? Is there you're just going to have to try and describe it, basically. Sorry, that's difficult.
No, that's okay. At the end of the day, I think when you're using the editor itself, you're not going to say, oh, I can now see that this is a CSS first approach. But what you will see is a lot more styling capabilities that are available due to the CSS first approach. It's kind of more of a philosophy that sits in the back of our minds when it comes to what are the capabilities we can provide and how can you apply the different CSS components to each element. So visually, it's still going to be a very visual build. You're not going to have to write CSS. We'll be able to introduce we're going to be able to introduce CSS classes and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen endeavors in not rivals of yours, actually, more block-based solutions. So things in the Gutenberg editor where you kind of set something up and then you decide, I'm going to call it that. This button, I'm going to call big red button or something like that. And so all of the settings then bind to that CSS class. And then later on, if you encounter a button, you can just say, oh, find the class that I want. Oh, big red button, that's the one. You click on it. And then it becomes the big red button. All of the, the styles that were associated with that sort of drop in. Is it like that? You fiddle with settings, do sliders, do margins, padding, background colors, gradients, all of that, and then say, let's call that big red button, and I can reuse big red button over and over again.
You got it.
It's almost like you're kind of creating global styles then. So right at the beginning of your Elementor project, you'll drop the button in for the first time and decide, okay, this project needs it to be this. You could really, okay, that's interesting. So you can start to lean into things like, you could have multiple classes. So background color with button, suddenly I've got background color red, button is, padding this, margin that. And so the combination of those classes then means that over time you can build up this sort of global palette of CSS things. Is that it? Have I kind of got it?
No, you got it. You got it.
That is the that's the kind of the way that I've seen just a few companies doing it. And I confess, when I saw that, I thought, well, that's ingenious. I like that. And then it stores my classes. That's pretty brave, though, I would have thought, for Elementor, because that is a really different approach. And is the intention of that then just to make it so that you don't have to do the settings for buttons every time you drop a button, and you don't have to do the settings for this, that, and the other thing? You can just lock them in and then just reuse them over and over and over again. And can I ask, you may not know the answer to this, will I be able to save those CSS settings that I've created, classes and what have you? Will I be able to save those to reuse them on other projects?
I think that's a great idea. If that's, I don't think that's available yet, but I'll propose that internally. I think that's excellent.
Yeah, because if I worked for, let's say I work for, I don't know, the BBC in the UK or something like that, and they've got like 20 different websites, but broadly speaking, they all have to look like the BBC. The colors are broadly similar, the layouts are all different. But if you could say, okay, there's all my CSS, let's take it from that one, put it over to these other 19. Yeah, that would be kind of interesting. Okay, so I think we've got a handle on what that is. That's a big change, and hopefully, after a small learning curve, that will be easy to accommodate. I'm guessing you're going to be producing a lot of like knowledge-based content and a lot of tutorials to guide your current customers through the initial kind of pain of this?
Yes. So in that regard, we are working on the educational material that would be required, whether it is help center documents or tutorial videos or anything that can help you or anyone using it adapt the new version quicker and to have that simpler transition. At the same time, you don't necessarily need to use the more complex features. These are more geared towards professionals that want to improve their workflow, but you're not required to use it. You can continue setting your global styles, global colors, So this is an additional capability.
Okay, in the shared show notes that you gave to me very kindly, you said that the workflow was one of the big things in V4, and we've touched on a few of those things. So we've touched on CSS classes. I think everybody listening to this podcast will probably understand variables and what they are. You might understand them in the sense of like global colors and things like that. But there's another one here, indicators. What were you thinking when you wrote that down? What are the indicators that you're describing there?
When you start working with CSS classes, you can create a lot of different classes. And sometimes when it comes to, we spoke about buttons before. So you can have the big red button, and then you can create another button and you can have different conflicts. So I can drag in a new button and I may have a conflict with an existing CSS class that I had applied to the new button that I dragged in. So these indicators are going to let me know when there's a conflict or when the local design updates, style updates, take precedence over the CSS classes. So it will help you visually see when there is an issue or when things are just smooth sailing.
Oh yeah, of course, because in the current setup of Elementor, everything is bound directly to its settings within the Elementor UI. I mean, obviously you could overwrite them with like a CSS file somewhere like styles.css, but I'm imagining that most of your customers are probably using all of the, the sliders and the set, the padding area and the margin and all that. But when you start to inject CSS, yeah, there is a chance that you'll duplicate the same thing. So you might add in padding twice or background color twice inside of two different CSS variables. So you're building a system which indicates there's a potential conflict here, and then you have to go in and I see, figure out where the error is, or which one you want it to take precedence or something like that.
Right. So the way CSS classes also are set up, there's a hierarchy to them. You can adjust the hierarchy. We'll have a CSS class manager, but if there is a conflict between the current settings of a element and one that you applied, then we will let you know where that conflict is.
Nice. Oh, that's really nice. That's doing a lot of heavy lifting for us. That's lovely. Now, one of the things you mentioned also in the endeavor for V4 was to make it more performant. I think one of the criticisms of Elementor in the past has been, especially when you look at the DOM, the output HTML, the kind of, I think somebody coined it as, not in terms of Elementor, but page builders in the WordPress space in general. This whole thing, I think they called it divception, where basically you've got a div and then another div and then another div. And all you're trying to do is put a paragraph on the page, but it's encapsulated by 12 divs in order to get the paragraph, because there's all these other things that could happen. Is it an endeavor to strip out a lot of that, or were you talking about the speed of the page builder or the way the page builder loads quickly when you're using it, or was it more about outputting clean, simple, easy to read HTML?
It's actually both. So we want to, on the one hand, make the editor more performant so that your work is faster. At the same time, we are removing a lot of the extra divs, a lot of the extra wrappers. The CSS build also contributes to that, but we are eliminating every unnecessary div that we can. So I've actually seen it myself in person, where we compared a V3 widget to a V4 widget. So you could have maybe 4 rows, 4 divs in a V3 element and just one in V4. So it's a huge difference.
One of the things that has really, I think, made Elementor grow is not just the fact that it's Elementor, that right from the outset when Elementor came out, a bunch of third-party solutions came out to extend what Elementor could do. So, famous form plugins made sure that their forms worked inside of Elementor. You've got third-party add-ons that have got additional capabilities so that you can drop their elements in. And I was just wondering if you intend to create documentation or reach out to this wider developer community so that when the time is right and the product is basically ready to move, that they will also be in the loop and be able to be supported through that. Because I know that that's a pretty big ecosystem, and a lot of your users will be relying on those third-party products as well. So I guess we'd like to know whether or not you're going to be thinking about them.
Yes, that is something we think about. So we will be preparing documentation for other developers to use and to update their products. And we're also going to be reaching out to them. That is 100% something that we are taking into consideration. We are preparing developer documentation, and we will definitely be reaching out to everybody to make sure that this is as smooth a transition as possible for everyone involved.
I guess people are going to also be asking the question, pricing, is this enormous amount of work that's going to be taking place? I wonder if it'll affect the licensing structure or the pricing model or anything like that. You may not know the answer to that at the moment, but I'm just curious to ask, have you heard any rumors of pricing changing either up or down, or at the moment, as far as you know, is it basically going to stay the same licenses for the same cost? Everything should just be the same.
We don't have any intention to change the pricing to accommodate Editor V4.
Nice and simple. There you go. Nice, easy answer to that one. And as far as I am concerned, that's about the sweet spot for me, about half an hour, something like that. So let's just go through what we went through. So we talked about the fact that we're moving from V3 to V4. It's going to be starting in a beta round in about April, end of April 2025. If you're an Elementor user, presumably there'll be communication about that and how you can contribute to that endeavor. But it's going to be running throughout the year 2025 and taking as long as it takes, basically. But the big takeaways really are a modest but noticeable change in the UI. So most things will be very familiar, but there might be a few tweaks here and there. You can combine things inside of posts and pages. So Elementor, you can use the V3 and the V4 stuff at the same time, but maybe not in the exact same element at the same time. And I guess the big one for me is this whole CSS thing, the move to sort of CSS variables. So V4 landing soon, hopefully, in the year 2025. Do you have a URL specifically right now to get people onboarded to that? Or is it more a case of keep an eye on the blog? I will make sure that anything that I see goes into my show notes for this particular episode. And if you listen to the This Week in WordPress show, we'll be sure to be constantly updating people over there as well. So do you know, is there a particular URL at the moment, or is it more a case of keep your ears to the ground a bit?
We do have a URL you can sign up for early access for. I'll share it with you, and then we can have that linked.
I will definitely put that into the show notes. So we don't know what it is right now, but it'll definitely be put into the show notes. But yeah, can't say it out loud because we don't know what it is just yet, but we'll figure it out. In that case, Gabriella, I think our time is up. Elementor V4, a very exciting and new innovative approach to your Elementor websites, dropping at some point in the year 2025. Thank you so much for chatting to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, that's all we've got time for this week. I hope that you enjoyed that. If you've got any commentary on that, head to wpbuilds.com and search for episode number 419 and leave us a comment there. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more at go.me/WP Builds. We are also kept on the airwaves by Bluehost. Bluehost, redefine your web hosting experience with Bluehost Cloud. Managed WordPress hosting that comes with lightning-fast websites, 100% network uptime, and 24/7 priority support. With Bluehost Cloud, the possibilities are out of this world. Experience it today at bluehost.com/cloud. And we are also generously helped out by Omnisend. Omnisend, do you sell your stuff online? Then meet Omnisend. Yes, that Omnisend, the email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. The one that's so good, it's almost boring. Hate the excitement of roller coaster sales? Prefer a steady line going up? Try Omnisend today at omnisend.com. And sincere thanks go to GoDaddy Pro, Bluehost and Omnisend for their ongoing continuing support of the WP Builds podcast. Podcasts like this could not happen without the gracious support of companies just like them. Once more, if you want to be involved, head to wpbuilds.com/advertise to find out more. Just before we finish, one last reminder. If you would like to be a part of the Page Builder Summit, it's starting in a few weeks' time, the 12th of May. During the course of that week, head to pagebuildersummit.com and sign up to get your free ticket. Okay, we will be back next week for an interview episode. It only remains for me to fade in some cheesy music, say stay safe, have a good week. Bye-bye for now.